I landed in Madison on the Monday of Thanksgiving week, hoping for a little warmth and a slice of normal. I was running on fumes from midterms, and the thought of my mom's cooking and sleeping in a real bed was the only thing that got me through the flight. Instead, I walked into a silent house and a text from my dad. It was just sitting there on my phone, a little blue bubble that blew up my life. The text read, "We used your $9,000 for a family trip. Enjoy the break." $9,000. I blinked. I didn't even have $9,000. I had $8,360. They hadn't even known the correct amount. Attached to the text was a photo. My mom, my dad, my little sister Megan, and even our dog, Barney. All of them squinting and smiling in bright sunshine in front of a beach resort. They were all wearing matching garish t-shirts. The caption underneath the photo simply said, "Cancun 2026. No shame. No warning. No. Hey Jake, we have a desperate emergency." Just a notification. They had taken my money and left. My grandpa, Walter, had just picked me up from the airport. He'd been waiting at baggage claim with a beat-up cardboard sign that said, "Jake, Chief Lug Nut." He'd been using that joke since I was 10, and he still thought it was hilarious. He had a quiet strength I'd always leaned on, and right then, I'd never needed it more. We drove to his house, a small, clean brick bungalow on the edge of town, the house he'd lived in for 50 years. The plan had been for me to just drop my bags and head to my parents' place, but he'd insisted I come in for a cup of coffee first. "You look thin," he'd said. "Road food's no good." We stepped into his kitchen. I hadn't even taken my coat off. I just stood in the middle of the linoleum floor, my backpack slipping off one shoulder, and held out my phone. "Grandpa," I said, and my voice cracked. "Look at this." He took the phone. His hands are thick and calloused from a lifetime of fixing tractors, but he was always gentle with small things. He put on his reading glasses, which were held together at the bridge with a tiny wrap of electrical tape. He read the text. He looked at the photo. His face didn't change. He just stood there perfectly still for about 30 seconds. Then he handed the phone back to me. He walked over to the counter, set his own coffee mug down with a quiet click, and carefully wiped the rim with his thumb. Finally, he looked at me and said, "They are not going to like what I do next." He did not raise his voice. He did not curse. He did not say the word revenge, or justice, or even angry. He just stated it like he was reading a grocery list or checking the oil on a truck. It was a fact, a thing that was now going to happen. I didn't argue. I didn't have any energy left to argue or cry, or even really feel. I was just empty. I was a broke college guy who had worked brutal hours to save every single dollar I could. And now, the people who were supposed to be my family, the people who were supposed to protect me, had treated my entire future like a souvenir shop. They'd bought a t-shirt with it. 5 days later, they were standing on our porch in the freezing cold, crying, begging, and asking us to stop. But before I tell you about that porch and those tears, I need to tell you exactly how this all started rolling downhill, one quiet, heavy step at a time. My name is Jake Porter. I left Phoenix in August for my junior year, heading back to Wisconsin for school. I'd set up a new grind for myself. A full class load, 20 hours a week at a shipping warehouse driving a forklift on the graveyard shift, and every weekend pulling double shifts at a campus coffee bar. My goal was simple. Pay for what I could, avoid as much debt as humanly possible, and keep my head above water. I didn't go out. I didn't buy new clothes. I ate ramen and granola bars and packed my own lunches. By the time November rolled around, I had saved $8,360 in cash. I know that exact number because I wrote it on a yellow sticky note, underlined it twice, and stuck it to the inside of the small, locking metal box where I kept the money. I hid that box in my old closet at Grandpa Walt's place, tucked under a pile of old quilts. I trusted him completely. I did not, however, trust online banks. Not after a security check fiasco last spring that left my entire account frozen for 2 weeks, leaving me stranded and waiting on hold for hours, unable to even buy groceries. Cash, I'd decided, was real. Cash was mine. My family has always been a strange, unstable weather system. My dad, Gary, is the kind of man who smiles wide at church and then cuts every corner he can in private. He's all about a respectable image. My mom, Linda, is a professional victim. She is brilliant at acting like nothing bad ever happened, and if you dare to point out that something did happen, her eyes well up with tears and she accuses you of being cruel and heartless. It's a very effective tactic. My little sister, Megan, just wants peace. She's caught in the middle and she hates it, so she begs everyone to just get along. I don't blame her. I used to want the same thing. Grandpa Walt is a different story. He's not loud, he's not flashy, and he's definitely not addicted to his phone. He's a patient, methodical man who ran a small tool and tractor repair shop for 40 years before retiring. He believes in receipts, in handshakes, and in letting people show you exactly who they are, and believing them the first time. He has this one line he always uses. Trust is your most expensive tool, Jake. Don't lend it to fools. When I showed him that text from my parents, I felt that clean, light-headed anger, the kind that makes everything look sharp and brittle around the edges. I expected him to be angry, to yell. He wasn't. He was interested. He was awake in a way I hadn't seen in years. It was like an old engine had just turned over. The next morning, he woke me up before the sun. It was still dark outside, the windows black and cold. He handed me a mug of black coffee and set a yellow legal pad on the kitchen table. Write it all down, he said. His voice was quiet in the pre-dawn dark. Write what down? Everything. Every dollar. Every date. Every place you worked. Who paid you, how much, and where you put it. Don't guess. Remember. So I sat there, the only light coming from the small lamp over the sink, and I wrote. Shipping warehouse, graveyard shift, paychecks cashed every Friday. Coffee shop, weekend tips, mostly cash. Side gigs, the $40 from our neighbor, Mrs. Gable, for moving her old freezer. The $100 from a professor for helping him move apartments. I listed every shift I could remember, every odd job. I wrote the total at the bottom. $8,360. Grandpa Walt nodded once, tore the sheet from the pad, and walked to the hall closet. When he came back, he was carrying something I had only ever seen in old movies. A heavy, dark metal typewriter. It was an old Underwood, and it must have weighed 30 pounds. He set it on the table like a judge setting down a gavel. The sound it made was heavy and final. He rolled a thick piece of cardstock into the machine and began to type. The thwack 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 of the keys was the only sound in the house. It was slow, deliberate, and loud. He was typing a letter to my father. But it wasn't addressed to my father. By noon, he had 3 identical typewritten letters. There was no emotion in them, only facts. He listed the money I had saved, itemized by the jobs I had listed. He listed where the money had been hidden, in his own house. He listed the date it had disappeared. He did not accuse. He did not insult. He wrote like a man laying out a blueprint or a measuring tape on a clean floor. He had me sign the bottom of each one. Then he put them in 3 separate envelopes. He had 3 certified mail slips stamped and addressed. One was to my dad's employer, a tidy, mid-sized accounting firm where image was everything. One was to the family accountant, the man who handled my parents' taxes and loved to brag about his clients at barbecues. And one was to the board of directors at the town's private country club, where my parents loved the idea of being seen more than anything else. A gentle nudge, Grandpa said, sliding the green and white receipts into his wallet. Not a shove. Not yet. From the post office, we went to the bank on Main Street. He had me open a new joint account with his name first, mine second. He deposited $100 of his own money to open it. What's this for? I asked. Bait, he said. Not a shield. I didn't ask what that meant. I was just following orders, trying to breathe. Our last stop was his friend's garage print shop. A gruff old guy named Ken, who looked like he'd been smoking since birth, printed up a dozen save-the-date cards. They were for a fake 75th birthday potluck for Grandpa Walt. The guest list he'd typed up was a who's who of people my parents loved to impress. A party, Grandpa? I asked, confused. Right now. "This is for the main course, Jake," he said, tucking the cards into his coat pocket. "You have to set the table before you can serve the meal." That night, we ate venison stew and crackers in near silence. After dinner, Grandpa sat in his recliner and told me something he had never said out loud before. "When your dad was a teenager," he said, looking at the dark television screen, "he used to sneak coins out of the ashtray in my old work truck. I kept my change for tolls in there. He never took a full roll, just a few quarters, a few dimes, just enough to think it didn't matter. But it matters. It always matters." I went upstairs to my old room, the room where I'd hidden the box. I already knew what I'd find, but I had to see it. The closet, the quilts. I moved them, and the space underneath was empty. The locking box was gone. No, wait, it wasn't gone. They'd put it back, but it was empty. They'd forced the simple lock, breaking it, and left the empty metal box. And the sticky note? The one with 8,360 written on it? It had been moved. It was crumpled and tossed into a drawer, like someone wanted the space to look cleaner after the theft. They had seen the number. They knew exactly what they were taking. I held that crumpled note and I felt like a complete idiot. Who am I in this family? The mule? The extra? The guy nobody invites to the vacation but everyone uses to pay for it? I went downstairs, sat on the couch, and pulled out my phone. I opened my social media, found the picture my dad had sent me, and I posted it. My caption was simple. "So glad they are enjoying my college savings in Cancun. Hope the weather is great." Within an hour, my phone was vibrating so hard it almost fell off the table. The post had been shared 31 times. Then the messages started. My mom. "Jake, this is so dramatic. People are calling me. You're breaking my heart. Why are you being so cruel?" My dad. "You are ungrateful and you are misunderstanding everything. This is a family loan. You are embarrassing us. Delete this post immediately." And then, a voice note from my sister, Megan. It began with, "They are really stressed, Jake," and ended with, "You're ruining their one chance to relax. Can you please just take it down? You're making everything worse." I went downstairs and showed Grandpa the messages. He listened to Megan's voice note without comment. He read my parents' texts. He didn't tell me to delete anything. He didn't tell me to keep going. He just set a folder on the kitchen table. Inside were small claims court papers filled out and an information sheet about reporting theft over $1,000. I looked at him, at the papers, and my stomach twisted. "Do we really want to blow this up?" I asked. This is family." He looked back at me, his eyes clear and steady. "They already did, Jake. We're just sweeping up the glass." Then he put another folder next to it. It was a thin one, marked simply, IRS. He tapped it with one finger. "This," he said very calmly, "is the one they will feel. Unreported cash gifts, large, unexplained cash expenditures. They take a dim view of that." By the next morning, Wednesday, the certified letters had clearly landed. My dad sent a frantic, rambling email with the subject line clarification. He said they had thought I wouldn't be home for Thanksgiving. He said they assumed the money in the box was miscellaneous funds from high school that I had forgotten about. I laughed out loud at the phrasing. Miscellaneous funds. As if $8,360 just grows like weeds in a closet. He said they were planning on surprising me with a contribution to my college fund later. And this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. Grandpa printed the email, folded it neatly in half, and slid it into a bright red folder he'd labeled nonsense. Then he made 2 quiet trips. One was to the county clerk's office to get a case number for the small claims packet. The second was to his old friend Art, a semi-retired, basement-dwelling lawyer who brewed his own pale ale and lived for this kind of domestic drama. Art drafted a formal demand letter that read like a church bell. It was clear, cold, and impossible to ignore. It gave my parents exactly 3 business days from their return to reimburse the full, documented, and stolen amount of $8,360, or face legal action for theft, trespass, and conversion. That afternoon, I got a text from my great-aunt Clara, Grandpa's sister. She's always been on his side of the family feuds. She had forwarded me screenshots of messages from my mom, sent last week, bragging about a deep clean of my old room at Walt's. My mom mentioned that she had also listed my old baseball trophies on an online marketplace. Clearing out all that old clutter, the message said. That text was dynamite. Proved intent. It proved they knew exactly what they were doing and when. I forwarded it all to Grandpa. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just nodded, as if confirming a measurement. We sent Art's demand letter that afternoon via courier, to be delivered to their house. A welcome home present. For the first time all week, I felt a small flicker of power. It wasn't joy. That night I slept long and deep. I dreamed I was counting out single-dollar bills, and they kept becoming heavier and heavier in my hands until they turned into house keys. 2 days after the demand letter was delivered, a black SUV pulled into Grandpa's driveway, pulled in too fast, spraying gravel. My parents were back from Cancun early. They looked sunburned, stressed, and off balance, the way people do after a bad roller coaster. The tans didn't match the panic in their eyes. I opened the front door. They didn't hug me. They didn't say hello. They just slid past me into the kitchen. My mom immediately sat at the table and started crying. My dad launched into a loud, fast story about confusion and timing and the misunderstanding that had apparently become their new favorite word. We were going to pay you back, Jake, with interest. It was just, we needed a break. Your mother's nerves. Grandpa let them talk. He sat in his armchair in the living room, just outside the kitchen, flipping through a hunting catalog. He licked his thumb and turned a page, looking at rifle scopes like it was any other morning. My mom, seeing she was getting no sympathy from me, tried a new tactic. Maybe we should just call the police, she sobbed. Tell them someone broke in. That's it. Gary, we were robbed. Someone must have taken it. Grandpa finally looked up from his catalog. His voice was perfectly level. If you lie to the police, Linda, and file a false report, I will personally hand the responding officer your text messages, the photo from Cancun, and the tracking number for the airline tickets you bought with your credit card 2 days after you were in my house. The room went absolutely silent. The only sound was my mom's breathing, which had hitched. He stood up, walked to his desk, and handed my dad a copy of Art's demand letter. My dad's face went from sunburned red to paper white. You could almost feel the arrogant pride slide off him like water. Return every dollar, Grandpa said, his voice flat, or Jake presses send. My dad looked at the IRS and county court envelopes sitting on the desk. Send what? He whispered. He knows what, Grandpa said. You're an accountant, Gary. You know exactly what. My dad swallowed his pride. It looked painful. We need a couple of days, he said. To move things around. Grandpa nodded once. You have until Monday, noon. They left. They looked smaller than they had when they came in. A bridge was gone, and we were the ones holding the matches. Monday came. No money. Just a text from my mom at 11:30 a.m. This weekend was very hard for us. We are trying to figure this out. Please give us time. I showed it to Grandpa. He didn't sigh. He didn't react. He just slid open the desk drawer. He laid the IRS envelope on the table, along with another one addressed to the sheriff's office. Your call, Jake, he said. I will not do this behind your back. You're the one they stole from. You're the one who decides. I told him to wait one more day. Not for them, for me. I wanted to see how far they would try to drag this out. I wanted to know, for my own sanity, if there was any line they wouldn't cross, if they would finally just do the right thing without being forced. I needed to see the experiment through to the end. I texted my dad. Grandpa has the letters. You have until noon tomorrow. That's it. Tuesday morning, I woke up early and found Grandpa already at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, the envelopes resting in front of him like 2 sleeping dogs. At 11:53 a.m., the phone rang. It was Megan. She was sobbing, hysterical. Jake, please, you're tearing this family apart. You have to stop. Dad lost a client. People are talking. Just stop. Dad wants to talk. She handed the phone to him. His voice was shaking with rage and fear. Jake? Son. We have a problem. The money. It's not all there. My voice was cold. I didn't recognize it. What does that mean? Not all there? We got most of it, he stammered. We can give you $3,200. But the rest. Why, our mom, she had a fall. The scooter. The hospital bill in Mexico, it was over $2,000, Jake. They don't take our insurance. I couldn't even process the stupidity. So you spent my money on a scooter accident. It was an accident, he yelled. We're trying. The resort. They had hidden fees. It evaporated. I took a deep breath. Dad, one question. Did you walk into my room at Grandpa's house, open my lockbox, and take $8,360 in cash? There was a long, terrible silence. I could hear my mom crying in the background. Finally, one word. Yes. I hung up. I picked up the IRS envelope. I looked at Grandpa. I said, send the first one. He didn't ask me if I was sure. He didn't hesitate. He just stood, put on his coat and his winter boots, and drove to the post office. I went with him. I watched him hand the certified letter to the clerk. I watched her stamp the receipt. It said, certified, and the time, 12:12 p.m. I took a picture of the receipt and texted it to my dad. My only caption was, one down, the sheriff is next. At 2 o'clock, their SUV appeared in the driveway again. They didn't come in. They stood outside on the porch, shivering in the cold. My mom was crying. My dad was talking about limits and bank delays and policies and how they were trying. Grandpa didn't rise to meet their excuses. He just stood at the window, sipping his coffee, and said, cash, today. They left. There was nothing else to say. At 6:41 in the evening, my dad came back alone. He walked up to the door, and when I opened it, he shoved a thick, unsealed envelope into my hand. Here, he growled. This is all of it for now. Call him off. I closed the door, walked to the kitchen table, and counted it in front of Grandpa. It was $5,200. I handed the stack to Grandpa. He peeled $500 bills off the top and pressed them back into my hand. For your trouble, he said. He put the rest of the cash in a locking tin and set it on the mantel, right next to the second letter, the one addressed to the sheriff. That night I slept like a rock. Not because everything was okay, but because I had chosen a road, and there was no turning back. Thursday, Thanksgiving, came with a calm, low, gray sky. No texts, no calls. Grandpa made pancakes and added chocolate chips, which he never does. It felt like a medal being pinned to my chest, without any words. At exactly 10:28 in the morning, my dad texted, we have the rest. We are outside. Please let us in. I opened the door. He was alone. He handed me a plain white envelope like it was radioactive. Inside, I counted $3,160. To the dollar, the exact amount needed to make $8,360. No note. No apology. I placed the envelope on the table next to the other cash. Grandpa nodded once. Good. Now they wait, he said. My dad, who was still standing in the open doorway, said, wait for what? It's over. You got your money. What more do you want? The party, Gary, Grandpa said, not even looking at him. You're still invited to the party. Sunday at 2. Community Center. Don't be late. He then gently closed the door. That afternoon, Grandpa called his financial advisor. He put the call on speakerphone. Yes, hello, Bob. I need to make some immediate changes to my estate plan. Yes, immediate. Gary and Linda Porter. Remove them. As primary beneficiaries, as contingent, as medical proxies. Remove them from everything. The new sole beneficiary is Jacob. Yes, Jacob M. Porter. Why? Because they're thieves, Bob. And I don't leave my legacy to thieves. Yes, I'm sure. My jaw was on the floor. He hung up and looked at me. I've been paying half their mortgage for 10 years, he said quietly. A little help. I thought it was family. But I've just been funding this. He logged into his bank, showed me the recurring monthly payment of $1,200 and clicked delete. On Friday, he called a locksmith and had the locks on every door changed. He handed me a new set of keys. He spent the afternoon on the phone, systematically cutting every tie. Yes, I'd like to remove Gary Porter from my AAA roadside account. No, I won't be paying for his. He's 48 years old, he can get his own. That night, he put his old, folded will into the fireplace. He struck a match and lit the corner. We watched the flames bend, then flatten, then kiss the edges of the paper until the ink turned into smoke. You don't reward rats with cheese, Jake, he said. Sunday looked like church. Grandpa wore khakis and a nice jacket with elbow patches. But we didn't go to church. We went to the community center. Remember those save the date cards? He had actually mailed them. The room was filled. Neighbors, his old poker buddies, former shop customers, even the pastor. And, crucially, my dad's old boss was there. The accountant was there. Several people from the country club were there. The trap was perfect. There was chili, mac and cheese, and a giant sheet cake with Walt, 75, early, in bright blue icing. My parents walked in like nothing had happened. They were smiling, waving, acting completely normal. My mom had brought cookies. My dad was pouring lemonade. People hugged them. People made small talk. You would have thought we were all in a terrible play called Appearances. Then Grandpa tapped the microphone. He thanked everyone for coming. He made a joke about how at his age, you have to tell people what matters while they can still hear you. He spoke about work and pride and paying attention to the truth. And then, with the same calm voice he had used all week, he said, I updated my estate plan this week. A man's legacy is built on the family he trusts. And this past week, I learned who in my family I can trust. My son, Gary, and his wife, Linda, stole $8,360 from my grandson, Jake, to go to Mexico. The room went dead still. Somewhere, a plastic fork fell onto a plate with a clatter. My dad's boss, who was holding a cup of chili, just froze. The accountant spat his lemonade back into his cup. My mom laughed once, a short, wrong barking sound. Walter, this is not the place. This is a family matter. It was a family matter, Linda, he said into the mic. It became a community matter when you decided your reputation was more important than your son's future. So, I'm clarifying my reputation. And my will. As of Friday, my entire estate. The house, the shop, the savings. It all goes to the one person who didn't steal from me, or lie to my face, or pretend a theft was a misunderstanding. It goes to Jake. He handed me the microphone. I didn't give a speech. I just looked at the crowd, at my parents' white, horrified faces. I said, "Thank you." Then I put the microphone down. We served cake. My parents left early without saying goodbye. The pastor came over and asked Grandpa, quietly, if he felt okay. Grandpa smiled, a real smile. "Never better, Pastor." On the way home, he looked out the window at the gray, frozen fields and said, "Revenge is not loud, Jake. It lasts." He paused, then added, "This is not even revenge. This is a correction." I believed him. The day didn't feel like a victory lap. It felt like a line that had finally been drawn in ink. The next morning, 2 days later, we sat across from a tired-looking county auditor. Grandpa signed the quitclaim deed to the house, transferring ownership over to me. He left the utilities in his name for now, but everything else, the taxes, the land, the future ownership, was mine. When we got home, he handed me the folder with the official stamp deed. A note was stapled to the front. "Trust is a stronger legacy than money." A week later, I packed my old duffel bag and drove back to campus. The air was sharp and clean, the roads lined with melting snow. My professors had been kind enough to let me make up what I'd missed, but I wasn't the same kid who'd left before Thanksgiving. I used to think college was about survival, just scraping by until the next break. Now it felt like something more. Each class, each paycheck, even each quiet meal in the cafeteria meant freedom earned, not borrowed. Before I left, Grandpa stood by his truck and said, "Keep your head down and your name clean. You've got both now." I nodded, and for the first time in months, I felt light. When I pulled into the dorm lot that night, I realized Thanksgiving hadn't ruined my year. It had rebuilt it one truth at a time. Christmas came with heavy snow. We didn't put up a tree. We roasted a chicken and watched old war movies. Card arrived from my mom. It said, "We miss you. Come home for Christmas. Let's start over." Inside was a picture of their decorated tree, the dog in antlers, my sister holding a plate of cookies. I put the card in the nonsense folder. I did not respond. In January, my dad lost his job. The boss at the party, it turned out, did not like family drama that involved theft. In March, I got a long handwritten letter from Megan. She said she finally understood some of it. She said Mom cries all the time and that they might have to sell the house. She asked if we could get coffee. I haven't answered yet. Maybe I will. Maybe not. Sometimes a clean break is the only mercy you can afford. Here's what I learned. Love without honesty isn't love. Family without accountability isn't family. And savings without boundaries is just bait. They tried to erase me with a vacation. Instead, they erased themselves from the will, from the house, and from my history. They wanted me to pretend it was all a misunderstanding. I chose to make it understood. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel.